Hello, my name is Mike Bodewitz. I am here to share my story. I have kept this a secret for a while, and I am ready now to share my story about my remembrance of my past life. The reason I kept it a secret is because I did not want to see myself as bragging or gloating or anything of that nature. It was a personal life for me that was pretty famous. So I didn't tell a lot of people about it. I would say about 4 or 5 at the most. I actually privately told about my previous life. But I have felt recently now is time to release this information and what I know about my past life as King Arthur. Yes, King Arthur. It all started with the vision I received. I was in meditation. I was open. I had no intention on receiving this vision, but it happened regardless. And it was so vivid that it has stuck with me since then. I would say this vision I received probably happened 4 years ago, if I'm accurate in that remembrance. So the vision goes thusly. I was in meditation, I was open, and what I saw was a sword coming out of the water and an arm coming with it. The sword was very magnificent, to say the least. And the arm itself was even more interesting. And the sword came right out of the water and just stuck up. And there was this hand holding this sword. And I instantly knew that the sword was Excaliber. And the hand that was holding it was the Lady of the Lake. And what's interesting to note about the hand is it had a webbed hand. It looked very aquatic. It almost looked like a mermaid or a mere hand. And it had webbed hands. It had five fingers, but it had webbing between the fingers. And the skin was almost aquatic. It was almost had like a scaly texture to it. So normally what you see in like the media and on the internet and stuff is the Lady of the Lake has a very human looking hand, very pretty. This hand was not like that. It was definitely different. And I got the feeling that this being, the Lady of the Lake, was very aquatic, almost like a mere person. So I received this vision, and it was so vivid that I actually stopped my meditation to collect myself and try to comprehend what I just saw. And I instantly knew that what I saw was a vision of Excaliber coming out of the lake by the Lady of the Lake. So after that, I needed more information. I needed to try to understand why I was seeing this vision. And several more meditation sessions I went through to gain more information. And I learned a lot about King Arthur and my life as King Arthur and my role in reshaping a kingdom. So what I'm about to tell you is what I received through several meditation sessions and jotting down this information after each time and putting events together And they all didn't come together. It came together in chunks, and I had to put them together. So it was a little difficult, but it was also very enlightening. So what I'm about to tell you is a basic rundown of what I received in meditation on my life as King Arthur. So it all started when I was a kid. My mother was just a normal peasant woman. She lived within the kingdom and was single, and she was just a normal peasant woman trying to survive under this oppressed king, which ended up being my father. And how I was conceived was the king was a very cruel king in this kingdom. He was not nice to his subjects. He was not nice to the people there. He was a very ruthless king. He had a son that was supposed to be his heir. And there was a queen, but he was very, just not a nice king. His people did not really like him very much. And my mother, this peasant woman, was very beautiful. It was a very beautiful peasant woman. She had the beauty of a queen. And at one point, she was witnessed by the king in passing. And the king was so attracted to her that she was secretly brought to him. And he wanted her. So he laid down with her and impregnated her. So my parents, as King Arthur, my father was the king, but my mother was a normal peasant woman. So he laid down with her and conceived, my mom conceived me through the king. And it was totally against her will. So basically, she was raped by the king, which brought me into the world. Once he had an affair with her, and he got what he wanted from her, she was thrown out back onto the street and became pregnant with me and eventually conceived me. And through that indiscretion, gave birth to a new way. So I came into the world and I lived with my mom in the kingdom, very poor. And I grew up loving to leave the kingdom and run around in the woods and enjoy nature and run around in the forest. Then I would come back to the kingdom. And it was about, I was about 12 or 13. I was a teenager. And I noticed a man had just came to town. And he was a traveling man. And he had come from far away. And he was an older man. And he had a long white beard. And he was very wise. I sensed something about this man as soon as he came into town. And he quickly took an interest in me for some reason. At the time, I did not know why. But he quickly took an interest in me for some reason. And we would meet and just hang out on occasion, and he would teach me things. And he lived actually out in the woods. And I would go and visit him. And he eventually told me his name, and his name was Merlin. And he taught me many things about the world, about magic, about my role in my incarnation and what I was here to do. And he came specifically to help me. And at the time, I didn't understand. So for years, I learned from Merlin. He was like a second father to me. I mean, he was my father. I looked at Merlin as a father figure. He spent much time with me, taught me so many things. And he started unveiling truths to me the older I got. I was about 16, I believe, and he started telling me that something was going to happen and I needed to prepare for it. And it all had to do with Excaliber. It all had to do with receiving Excaliber and becoming the rightful king. And at the time, I didn't want to be king. I had no desire to take on that responsibility and be king because I saw what my father was like and I did not want to be like him. So I ended up just allowing Merlin to guide me as kind of a spiritual teacher. And one day, and this is where it comes to the vision that I saw, one day I was, distraught about the whole thing, about, supposedly becoming the king and stuff like that. And I was walking next to the lake. And I saw the water bubbling up in the lake, and I walked over to it. And that is when I saw Excaliber come out of the water. And that was the vision that I saw in the very beginning. I saw Excaliber come out of the water with the arm and just sit there. I did not see any other part of the being that was holding the sword. But as soon as Excaliber came out of the water and was sitting there, I knew that I had to take it. I knew it was for me, and I knew that I had to take it. I reached out, and I climbed in the water, and I reached out and grabbed Excaliber, and the hand let go and went back down in the water and disappeared. And as soon as I grabbed that sword, I had felt like something went within me, like magic went with me, energy, something went within me as soon as I grabbed it. And it was like this sword was meant for me. And it was like we were one. The sword and I were one. And it was just the craziest feeling. And I ran back to Merlin with the sword to show him. And he told me, this is the beginning of the greatness that is coming to this kingdom. And we devised a plan to basically make me king. So he had taken the sword and he had studied it, and we had come up with the plan to basically bring light to this sword. So what we did is we went out into the forest. We found a giant rock, and Merlin told me to put it in the stone. He told me to put it in the rock. And he's like, you're the only one that can put it in the stone. And I was like, well, how am I going to do that? And he says, first of all, you have to believe. And then, so I ended up taking it and I turned it upside down like this. And I just closed my eyes and I saw it going inside of the stone. And I forced it down and I felt nothing as I was going down. I forced it down and I opened my eyes and it was in the stone. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it went inside the stone and I felt nothing. And I let go of it and it stayed there. And Merlin told me that the sword was an extension of myself. And I literally raised the vibration of that sword so much that it was able to pass through physical things. And as soon as I let go of it, it froze into that stone. And the vibration went back down. So it was literally stuck in the stone. And then Merlin was like, okay, now we tell everybody. So it was my job to run back and basically get word out in the kingdom that I had found a sword stuck in the stone out in the woods, out in the forest. And I told everybody I could. I ran and told everybody I could. I showed them where it was at. And people would spread the word, and it eventually got throughout the kingdom. And at this point, the king had gotten word of it, and he had decided to send somebody out there and go check it out for themselves. So he sent one of his knights out there, and his knight witnessed the sword and actually tried to pull the sword out of the stone, and the knight could not do it. One of the king's best knights. And the knight went back and told the king. And Merlin, it was Merlin's turn to do his part. He went to the king and he prophesied. And he said, this sword is special. Whoever can pull it out of the stone will become the next king. So then it was on. Then everybody, it was determined that whoever could pull the sword out of the stone would be the next king. And of course, the next person to try was the king's son, because that's who we wanted the next king to be. The king's son came out, tried to pull the sword out, could not do it. There was tons of people, and this went on for a while. There was word from outside the kingdom that this was happening, and people would come and try to pull this sword out of the stone. And many months went by of people trying to pull this sword out of the stone, and nobody could do it. And then at that point, it was my turn. And somebody had said, well, why don't you try? And I was still like 16, 17, because everybody was basically just didn't know what to do. And I was one of the people that haven't, in the kingdom that hadn't tried, one of the men. So I was told to try. I didn't do it on my own. I was told to try. And I went over to it, and instead of pointing it out like this, I reached with one hand, grabbed the sword, and as I grabbed the sword, I felt that energy again. And there was the sword started to glow as I grabbed it. And the vibration of the sword lightened up as soon as I touched it, and I was able to remove it from the stone. And when I removed it from the stone, the sword was literally glowing. And there is on the blade of the sword, there is actually 5 symbols on the blade that were glowing as well. And when I pulled that sword from the stone, everybody was literally shocked. I mean, it was so quiet for like so long that I was holding this sword, and people were just literally shocked. And then after their shock subsided, they started, saying, "Oh, hail King Arthur, oh, hail King." And that's literally when I became king. And from that moment on, my memory of King Arthur stopped. And I went from there to later on in my life, after I became king, and my father had passed away, and I became king, and I recalled the kind of king I became. I recalled the kind of kingdom I turned around. I ended up changing that kingdom so much that it totally changed everything in that area. Not only did it change things for the good, but it also changed things for the bad, because word got out of the great King Arthur and the amazing kingdom that I had basically created with everybody's help, that there was outside influences that wanted to come and try to challenge me and my kingdom. So not only did I change the kingdom around and usher it into greatness, but I also brought a lot of war and outside evil that wanted to come and take that away from us. One thing to note in my life as King Arthur is it was a very amazing life. It was the days back then were very magical. They're not really like they are now. There was a lot of magic, dragons were still flying back then. I actually befriended a dragon, and he became my trusted friend. And I still talk to him to this day. His name was Draco. And I had went to go and make friends with this dragon, because there was always this story of this dragon up on this mountain near the kingdom that nobody bothered to go up there. They were scared of this dragon. And I went up there to befriend it, because I didn't want anything within my kingdom to be fearful, to be negative, I wanted to spread peace and love throughout this whole area. So I went to make amends with the dragon, and I went up there with Excaliber and went to the dragon, and at first the dragon did not want me there. It was the dragon hated humans, and rightly so, because my father had tried to hunt down the dragons for a while and kill them because they were scared of them. But I told the dragon that I was not there to harm him, but to befriend him and bring peace to this area. And it took some time before the dragon decided to take me for my word. But the moment the dragon saw Excaliber, he knew that I was telling the truth. And Excaliber was like the proof for Draco to align himself with me. And our bond between the dragon and I was so amazing. I mean, I literally got to fly with this dragon, and I have memories of this. And it's an amazing thing. And this dragon actually fought wars with me in the kingdom. And that was one of our huge advantages to keeping peace in the kingdom, is we had this dragon with us. And I would literally ride this dragon into battle with all the knights and the whole kingdom. And we would win wars because I had a dragon on my side. And at this time, dragons were not aligned with humans. So it was kind of a special bond and a special thing that I had with this dragon in this kingdom. And yeah, what I can say is I have met in this life, I have met two people that were in my life, in my King Arthur life. And it was an amazing life with an amazing experience of bonding with the dragon, going to war and fighting magical wars, reshaping a kingdom, bringing peace and bringing peace and love to a kingdom. And it was just an amazing, I have all these memories about my life as King Arthur. But I think probably the most significant thing that I remembered about my life as King Arthur is Excaliber. That sword was the most amazing thing that I have ever seen. And I was told, and I'm going to finish this story about Excaliber, because I was told that I need to share how Excaliber was made. Excaliber was made by many different beings, and it was created by many different beings, and thus given to me by the Lady of the Lake. And it was all to create that change and that consciousness in that kingdom at that time. So, just to give you guys a little idea what Excaliber looked like, is I'll start from the bottom of the sword. The bottom of the sword had a round gold butt symbol on it, on the bottom of the handle. It was round and gold, and it had a dragon carved in the bottom of it. Then the handle went up, and the handle was wrapped with dragon skin and was the most durable and toughest wrapping for the handle that could be given. So you have the gold dragon symbol, you have the handle that's wrapped in dragon skin, you have the handguard, which is gold. There was no little round things on the end of the handle. It was just a straight handle, or a handguard on each side that was gold. Now, where it gets interesting is the blade. The blade was actually crystal. The blade itself was crystal, was a type of crystal that was from the inner earth. And the purpose of the crystal blade was to transfer energy. And it was used to transfer energy from myself and the other end of it. So it was needed to create energy transfer. And that's how it literally, when I stuck it in the stone, that's how it vibrated to such a high frequency that I was able to go in the stone, because the crystal of the blade. So the crystal was actually from the inner earth and was created by the Agarthans. And also, the Agarthans knew that I could not do battle with a crystal sword without it being compromised. So what they did is, on the outside of the crystal, they put a type of hardened metal. They melted a hardened metal on the outside of the crystal to create that hardness, so the crystal wouldn't get destroyed. And the metal that basically coated the crystal was actually an inner earth metal as well. I do not remember the name of it, but it was nothing, and I looked it up. I was told the name of this inner earth metal. I looked it up, and it is not known to the human race. It is a type of metal that's only found in the deepest parts of the inner earth. So many beings created this sword, and so much effort went into creating this sword. The star people were actually the ones that infused the sword with energy. It was put together by the Agarthans, and then the star people actually infused the sword with energy. And when it was being finished, put together, it was ushered from the inner earth up through the earth to the surface, where it was given to me. And the mirror person, the mirror maid, was actually the one that brought it from the inner earth up through the waters and gave it to me. One thing to note also about the blade is, like I said earlier, there was 5 distinct symbols going up the blade. And each symbol has a purpose. And I have worked with somebody else that was living that life with me to recall the nature of those symbols. And we have gotten to the 3rd symbol, but we have not figured out all 5 symbols yet. So 3 symbols, we know what they mean, but the other 2 we haven't received what the meaning is yet. But each symbol has a specific meaning and completes the sword and the energetic signature of the sword. And I've sketched this out. I plan on sketching it out and actually doing a really good drawing of it to release eventually, because it has so much meaning to King Arthur and his life. And so that's basically all that I can remember, is my life as King Arthur was an amazing life. It was filled with wonder, change, magic, war, bonding with dragons and learning from Merlin, love, hate. I mean, it was an amazing, amazing life. But I think seeing how that sword was made was probably my favorite thing. So yeah, that's basically my story about my life as King Arthur. I'm sitting here trying to remember everything, and I'm getting a completed feeling to that. There may be more to it later on, but right now, I believe that's all I need to say about that life. I can't recall anything else right now. But thank you for listening to my story. I really, really appreciate it.